Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
Returning to past love. August Davies absolutely loved representing Kent University as a student ambassador. It was always such an amazing chance to meet new, younger students, learn about their experiences and their hopes for aspiring to go to university in the future. He always got to go on fun activities, meet other great university students, and he just flat out loved it. August sat in his little black car, and he was so bad at knowing cars that he didn't even know the make of his own, as he just allowed the freshly cleaned and MOT softness of his seat take his little weight. He was driving down a very long road that he just hadn't driven down in absolute ages. There were thick, perfectly straight pine trees lining the road that didn't have a single pothole in sight, and all the bright white lines seemed to have been freshly painted. That was something August was very glad about, because when he was last on this road, he was surprised his best friend's mother knew where to drive. The road markings were that faded. The wonderful sky above was crystal clear, and that was rather great for an icy cold autumn day that forced August's breath to condense in front of his eyes the moment he was outside. But inside the wonderful warmth of his little car, August was toasty and seriously looking forward to today. The air was also delightful, with it having the crisp, refreshing tang that August loved about November, but it having enough of a bite to make him alert. He was driving down this particular road because it was the very old route that he used to take when he went to secondary school, and this was the first time in 4 years he was actually going back. August felt so excited, nervous, and really interested in what it was going to be like. He had no idea how different the school would be. He didn't know if it would look the same, how many of his old teachers would be there, or if anything was the same. He had simply seen the work opportunity pop up on his student ambassador dashboard and signed up, and truth be told, he actually had no idea whatsoever what he was helping out with today. It could have one-on-one reading, confidence skills, or a university-related workshop. He had no clue. August braked a little as a large red car gently came out of a small gap in the trees, and August realized there was a nearby industrial estate, and cars, motorbikes, and lorries always came out of that little gap. He had never focused on that before, because he hadn't been able to drive by himself. It was amazing how 4 years could change a person. The sound of August's car running was the only thing he could hear, and that was another major difference between now and the past, when he had to come along here for the school run. It was sheer madness now that August used to hear so many cars honking, shouting, and braking harshly down here. Thankfully, he didn't have to put up with any of that now. August checked the time on his dashboard, and sure, he would be a few minutes, a lot of minutes early, but he was excited about it. It could at least give him a chance to see his old school, maybe talk to the receptionist a little, and just enjoy being back. That really would be great and wonderful, and August couldn't wait. But there was one thing in particular he was slightly curious about. Edward Harris was a hot boy that August had seriously liked, admired, and been head over heels for during secondary school. August had of course tried to talk and get to know Edward a little over the 6 years they had been at school together, and it had sort of worked. August knew that Edward wanted to go to university, become a teacher, and eventually work at their old secondary school, because he was just that sort of amazing person. So all August could wonder was if he would see the utterly beautiful and hot boy he had been in love with for so long. August wasn't sure, but he was really interested in finding out. Edward Harris was so looking forward to seeing the hot, sexy, amazing boy that he hadn't seen for years and years. He was flat out excited to see August again, and it couldn't have been a better day for it. Edward sat on a very soft, cushiony purple chair in the small box-room reception area of the school as he waited for the beautiful man to show up. Edward had never really been in the reception area, so it was a little weird. Normally, Edward came through the staff's entrance that went completely around the reception area. But as strange as it was to sit here, it was good in a way. Edward got to look at the young man with very good-looking brown hair and smile work behind the wooden reception desk, and Edward watched a bunch of short male students hurry off to their lessons through the thick glass wall and doors a few meters from him. Edward had to admit, though, he did sort of feel like a naughty student that was about to be told off. When he was a student here, he had seen plenty of boys and girls sitting here waiting to be called into reception. At least Edward wasn't going to have to do that. Instead, he was going to see a beautiful boy that he hadn't seen for ages, and hell, August didn't even know he was gay. It had been August that was the quiet, shy, little gay boy at school, and Edward had always admired him from afar. August might have been shy, but he was always so clever, strikingly perfect, and so cute. He was just perfect, and in an ideal world, Edward really wished he had been man enough to actually ask out August. But he never had, because Edward just knew his friends would never ever accept him being gay, and they most certainly wouldn't accept August being his boyfriend. Everyone in the school loved August because he was so helpful, kind, and brilliant towards everyone. Yet there was still a massive gap between liking someone because they're nice and great towards you, and liking them because your friend's dating them. It was probably why Edward had worked so hard to go to university, get his degree, and become a teacher. He knew that his friends wouldn't be smart enough to go to university, and even if they did, they wouldn't have liked the amount of work it was. So in a way, it was just perfect for Edward. He got to have his perfect education, get away from his school friends that would never allow him to be himself, and Edward would get to return here, to the school where him learning about his sexuality all started. He had absolutely no idea why he had always wanted to return to this school, to continue with training to become a fully qualified teacher. As in the UK, Edward sadly needed 2 full years of teaching experience, but he just wanted to make a difference. When he had told his parents, friends, and even people at university that, they had normally laughed or smiled, but that was the truth. Edward's secondary school certainly didn't pay well. It was in special measures, and it wasn't even the best school in the area. But Edward wanted to be a teacher here, to show the students that they really could do whatever they wanted in life. It was okay to be who you were, and if Edward was truly honest with himself, he just wanted to be there in case a gay student was struggling, and he wanted to be able to offer a helping hand if the student really needed it. Thankfully, that hadn't been the case so far. As the massive metal and glass doors to the reception area opened, and a very sporty-looking woman with long blonde hair ran in, and Edward could have sworn she was a teacher, or at least an assistant, the reception area was filled with the delightful hints of pine dampness and the refreshing tang that only ever happened after rain. Edward hadn't noticed it was raining, but that was probably just because he had been focusing too much on preparing for Kent University's arrival. Edward hadn't really arranged them for them to do too much, because the student ambassadors were meant to be doing a confidence-building workshop for 2 hours with the students. And Edward was seriously glad about that, because there were so many amazing students in the school, but some of them just lacked the confidence they needed. It was a massive shame, and that was why Edward had bitten off the university's hand when they had offered the workshop. And well, when he had found out that strikingly beautiful August was turning up, that was just the cherry on the cake. And hopefully Edward might even get a chance to pop August's cherry later on. That would be amazing. The sound of students hurrying off to their lessons, the reception phone ringing, and the metal and glass doors opening again, all made Edward look up, and he just grinned like a little schoolboy. His heart quickened. His throat went dry. His hands turned sweaty. He just stared as a very cute, gorgeous August walked in from the rain, dripping wet, and wearing a black coat, black shoes, and a very cute bright blue hoodie that said Student Ambassador across the front and back. That was presumably some sort of official student ambassador uniform. When August took off his hood, Edward's heart skipped a few beats, as Edward just stared at how beautiful August had become over the 4 years they hadn't seen each other. August used to be a little on the larger side, but now you couldn't even tell that had once been the case. August had a very thin, sexy waist that Edward was sure he could wrap his arms around with little effort. August's smooth, handsome face was cute and clean-shaved, with his piercing green eyes almost illuminating the reception area. And August's short brown hair still framed his face so perfect, beautifully, and strikingly that Edward really did feel like the luckiest man alive for getting to see his perfect man all over again. This was going to be amazing fun. August flat out couldn't believe this was happening in the slightest. Sure, he had sort of expected to see the beautifully stunning straight boy that he had had a crush on for years and years during secondary school, but this wasn't right, fair or anything. August's heart jumped up to his throat. He felt sweat pour down his back. August just didn't know what to do. He was like a deer in headlights. But after a few moments, August forced himself to relax a little, because as he stood in the little reception area that he had walked through so many times as a student, with the little cushiony chairs, the large glass doors that led into the main school area, and the wooden reception desk that looked so small now, August just told himself that he was okay. August was perfectly safe here, and there was no one who was going to judge him, because this wasn't the early days of secondary school, and none of Edward's friends were here now. It was just him and the amazing man he had admired, liked, and seriously wanted to love for so long. Just the way August loved it. Edward was still as fit, sexy, and beautiful as he had been all those years ago. He still had his wonderful blonde hair that wasn't so long August could play it if he really wanted to, but it was long enough that Edward was forced to style it and part it to the left. That really did only add to his beauty. And as Edward stood there, smiling at August, he realized that Edward was probably into him. August had seen that smile on boys all too many times before, and Edward seriously looked so cute, sweet, and just adorable. It took everything August had not to just run over to him and hug him and kiss him, like he had wanted to do for so many years during secondary school. "I didn't expect you to still be here," August said slowly. It was the only thing remotely intelligent he could say in front of this strikingly stunning man. Edward smiled. "I'm a man of my word, and August, you look amazing." Those were the words August never ever expected to hear Edward say, and it was the way that Edward had said it that sent chills washing over him. August had no idea that Edward was even remotely gay or interested in men. It was great to hear but surprising. Now August was just wondering what else he didn't know about this beautiful man, but August really wanted to find out. "What do you do now?" Edward asked, taking a few steps closer to August. With each step Edward took, August's stomach churned and filled more and more with butterflies. When they were at school together, August had always dreamed of sitting next to Edward, talking to him and laughing between them. But the closest August had ever gotten to this stunning man was when there was a school desk or two in between them. Not what August wanted. "You know, I know psychology, and am working on my dissertation now, and I know that isn't what you wanted to ask," August said, smiling. The last comment seemed to surprise Edward a lot, but he grinned like a schoolboy, and August hadn't realized until now how badly he had missed that radiant smile. "You always were good at reading me," Edward sighed. "Fine, I want to know if—" "Sorry I'm late," a very tall woman said, as she walked in dripping wet from the rain and hurrying over to the reception desk to sign in. August knew that she was a woman from the university's outreach department, and she was the person who was meant to be leading the confidence session, but he didn't know her name. There were so many amazing people at the outreach department that it was flat out impossible to know what their names were half the time, but she was smiley, excited, and seemed to radiate energy. This was definitely going to be a great session. August gestured Edward should continue what he was saying, but he weakly smiled, shook his head, and stood up perfectly straight. August just knew that he was now in teacher mode, and he was no longer going to be the striking, beautiful, and perfect man that he wanted to ask out, catch up with, and hopefully do a lot more with. "Hello," Edward sighed, heading over to the woman. "I'm Edward Harris." As the two continued talking, August felt a little jealous and deflated that the woman was getting to talk more to his Edward. It was silly to be jealous, but it was only now that August was realizing just how much and how badly he had missed this stunning boy. The boy that made him realize he was gay, that he definitely had a thing for blonde boys, and the boy that was so kind to him, and was probably his only equal in the entire year group. And the boy that August seriously wanted to be with. Something that looked just as unlikely now as it did all those amazing years ago. Over the course of the next hour and a bit, Edward had had the amazing job of leading gorgeous August and Miss Laker, the woman from the university, into the little classroom where they lead their session, and then Edward got to admire how wonderful and amazing August was in his new job. Edward had to admit that he rather liked the classroom, considering it was brand new, and he hadn't been in this particular one before. It had some great large windows wrapping around the entire outside of the school, as it was a corner classroom. There were plenty of large white school desks, and whoever the teacher was, they clearly didn't believe in having a tidy desk. Edward had never ever seen a teacher's desk with so many files, sheets of paper, and other rubbish on it. But Edward had to admit that he wasn't exactly a fan of the bright light blue carpet that the school was trialing to change it up a little, and the almost blinding white walls were a little too much. Yet at the end of the day, this was school. Nothing white stayed white for too long. "So what skills did we just use in that activity?" August asked the class. Edward just grinned as he focused on how stunning August looked as he stood there in this blue university hoodie at the front of the classroom, focusing on the other students. There were about 10 16-year-old students in their school uniform, as they all sat on chairs in the shape of a boat. It was a brilliant activity they had just done, because they had all been given clues about their character, and they had to communicate with each other to find out where their correct seat was on the pretend boat. It was a great activity to Edward, and it was good to see that August was almost a partner in leading this confidence session with Miss Laker. This August was nothing like the quiet and shy boy he had known for so many years. Sure, August was confident in the classroom, but Edward doubted that extended to strangers. Edward was really glad that August was slightly different now, but even that short conversation before Miss Laker had so rudely interrupted them had showed Edward had his sexy gorgeous August was still the same boy that he had fallen for so long ago. And that he was a boy that Edward was still desperate to talk to. "Exactly," August said. "You needed to use problem-solving skills to decide who needed to sit here, and how could you possibly use this to increase confidence?" As beautiful August continued to talk with the students and discuss the problem of confidence and how to increase it, Edward was just flat out stunned. Not because the students were making great points, but that was part of it, but because August was just so perfect. The old August would never have been able to do anything even remotely related to public speaking, but here stood a very cute man that was helping to change the lives of young people for the better. Edward had taught some of the wonderful students in this room for a few months, and he had recommended most of them here today for this confidence session. Like a short little girl with long brown hair and a skirt that was certainly too short to be appropriate for school called Anna, she was an amazing student who was bright, clever, and wonderfully kind. But she was stuck at school because she simply didn't have the confidence to ask questions, ask for things she needed, and more. And August was definitely helping her, and so many other students, do that today. And there was just something really, really hot about that. Edward had always wanted to be with a cute, hot man that was kind, helpful, and amazing. And if working with young people to improve their lives wasn't amazing, then Edward seriously didn't know what was. After another hour, all 10 of the students shouted thank you as they left the classroom buzzing with energy, hope, and talking about how great the confidence class was, all as they rushed to get to the school bus to get home before all the good seats were taken. Edward had never liked taking the school bus as a kid, but it was needed, and Edward just loved driving now. As Miss Laker quickly went to the ladies' room, Edward stood and went over to beautiful August, who was stuffing a bunch of worksheets into a blue plastic bag that the university was going to keep for the next session in a few months' time. "You were great," Edward sighed, grinning. "Thanks," August said. "Your students were great and really engaged. I look forward to coming back." Edward took a step closer, so close that he could feel all of August's amazing body warmth against him. "I think," Edward sighed, "that was all down to you. Most of these students are so shy and quiet." It was so cute how surprised August seemed, and he just smiled. And Edward knew then that August really loved helping students, doing outreach work, and being able to help impact lives in small and meaningful ways. August finished stuffing the worksheets and a few highlighters into the blue plastic bag, and then he stood up perfectly straight and placed his hands on his wonderfully thin hips. "You want something, don't you?" August asked. Edward was slightly curious. "What do you mean?" "I just wanted to say how great you are." August nodded as he picked up the plastic bag. "Thanks, and you're amazing too, but we went to school together. I admired you for years from a distance. I know you never talk to non-sporty people without wanting something." August's words sort of hit Edward in a way that he didn't expect. Not because they were untrue in the slightest, but because of how true they were. Edward touched August's arms and was completely amazed at how smooth his hoodie was, and all Edward could think about was what else on August was soft, or possibly getting harder. "I don't mean it like that, honest," Edward sighed. "I'm just excited, happy, and I'm really glad to see you." August grinned like the beautiful little schoolboy that he had been so long ago. "I want to know if you're free now," Edward sighed. "I want to take you out. Me and the guys used to walk round the lakes after school. I want to do that with you." Edward didn't think August would actually get the reference for a moment, because everyone at their school knew that only the cool and popular people got the privilege of walking round the lakes near the school with the sporty people. August slowly nodded. "Sure. I would like that a lot." As Miss Laker walked back in, and Edward rolled his eyes because she was yet again interrupting their moment, he mouthed, "Meet me there in 10 minutes" to August, and then he went back into teacher mode to talk to Miss Laker. But he could only truly focus on how sensational his life was going to be, because for the first time in Edward's life, he was finally going to spend time with the man he had been fantasizing about for years. And that excited him, a damn sight more than he ever wanted to admit. Edward hated being 5 minutes late to meet gorgeous August, but he hugged him tight the moment he saw August, and Edward seriously loved the amazing chemistry, attraction, and build-up sexual tension flowing through them. August then sat down on a little wooden park bench with the long gravel footpath in front of it that wrapped around the massive dark blue lake, with large pine trees lining the vast majority of the lake. Edward used to love running around the lake with his friends when he was at school. They had even measured the footpath at one point, and each lap was 2 kilometers long, so it was great exercise. And it was even better on a biting cold day like today. Thankfully, it was no longer wet after the rain, and the muddy green field behind the bench was mostly hardened by frost, and the dimly glowing sun was low in the sky behind them. "I'm sorry," Edward sighed. "I didn't realize it would be this cold." August laughed a little as he pulled on his thick black coat more, and he even shivered a little bit. Edward hated seeing August uncomfortable, so he gestured if he could wrap his arms around him to keep him warm. August nodded, and Edward immediately did it. Edward had definitely wrapped his arms around August too quickly, so August instantly knew that Edward had wanted to do this for ages, but he didn't care. Edward loved the soft, warm feeling of having August in his arms. It just felt so natural, right, and comfortable, like he had already been doing this for years. And August didn't seem to hesitate either. "When did you know?" August asked. Edward loved how even now August wasn't one for small talk. "I'll give you a better answer. You were always the guy that I looked at." August chuckled to himself. "You're kidding me. The moment I saw you when I was 13, I felt something for you. Then over the next few years, I kept looking how beautiful you were, how sexy you were, and I wanted to talk to you so badly. What? Edward asked. So I made you gay. August laughed and shook his head. No, but you helped me realize I liked boys a lot. And you were always the boy I wanted. Edward shook his head, because August had been the same for him. The moment he had seen August join their class in September, when they were both 13, was the moment that Edward realized that he wasn't completely straight. Of course he had had to hide it for years, and only watch the amazing boy he wanted to talk, kiss, and get with, but ultimately couldn't. Edward had tried to find out information on being gay online, but that seriously only went so far. Edward had wanted to try to be openly gay once August had come out, but he had heard the comments his friends had said behind closed doors. And Edward just didn't want those comments aimed at him. So Edward told August all of his. August shuffled around Edward's arms and their freezing cold hands touched. Edward shivered with pleasure. Do you think we would have worked out in school? August asked like it was a serious question. Edward shrugged, not because he wouldn't have wanted to try, but because he so badly wanted to. I don't think so, August said. I was a nerd. You were a hot jock. Those groups didn't exactly mix at school, did they? Edward just laughed. That was probably the truest thing he had ever heard. But August said, grabbing Edward's hands. Edward almost recoiled at how cold and smooth and divine August's hands felt. I am willing to try now. Edward was shocked. His throat dried up. His heart pounded in his chest. Then he nodded, because he was holding hands, talking to, and getting a chance to be with the man he had admired for so long, that he actually felt like they had had feelings for each other for years. And clearly those feelings had never died. And these weren't feelings of hopes, desires, and dreams for a maybe future. They were hopes, desires, and fantasies for a real future where Edward and his beautiful August could be happy, in love, and get to have a relationship like both of them wanted all those years ago. And that was something that Edward seriously wanted, and was seriously looking forward to. A few months later, August was driving in his little black car down a long straight road lined with massive oak trees either side of him, and he loved the amazing hints of damp, cold crispness that filled the late winter air, and he also loved the delightful manly scent of his wonderful boyfriend who was sitting in the passenger seat. Even now, as August was driving Edward to work, and he was going to deliver another confidence class to the amazing students, August had to admit Edward looked divine in his black suit, black shoes, and blue tie that August was certainly looking forward to taking off later on. The entire past few months had just been absolutely magical, heavenly, and it had been better than August ever could have imagined. They had gone on so many dates, told each other so much about themselves, and they had laughed tons. August was even sure that his laughter lines had become so deep over the past few months that he wasn't sure they were ever going to leave him. Not that he actually wanted that. Edward just had such a great ability to make him smile, laugh, and be so happy about the smallest of things in life. They really were perfect for each other. August loved it, how they were already planning a small future together, with them having a house, flat, or apartment together in a few months' time, and then they had already promised each other that everything would snowball from there. And unlike what the old secondary school version of August would have been scared about, August just knew that this wasn't moving too fast, and August wasn't being silly because he was in love with a great man. This was all about doing what felt right in their relationship, because August and Edward had both realized in the past few months that they had liked each other for so long, they really knew they were right for each other. Two people didn't like each other for so many years, and after being apart for a few more, unless it was meant to be. And August seriously knew that him and Edward were always meant to be together. It had taken a little bit of time, but they were always meant to be boyfriends. And as August kept driving towards his old school, he just smiled to himself. Because the shy little boy that was scared about the real world, and how it would react to him being gay, would actually be so proud of himself. That shy little boy would be proud that August had found love, was himself, and was now a confident, amazing person helping others to find what he did. So August was definitely a completely different person to the boy that he had gone to his old school, but that was great and brilliant because now he had an amazing man by his side. And the future was looking amazing, breathtaking, and filled with joy. Just like August knew he would be, the moment him and Edward got home tonight, and August started working on Edward's suit.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help us spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteleyverse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.